I'm so excited to be here. This is my hometown. Woo! Oh my God, I love Chicago so much. It is so filled with memories for me. I walk down any street, I drive I see everything. I see my whole life before me. I'm one of a very small handful of people who has what is known as highly superior autobiographical memory, which means that I virtually remember every day of my life. You can give me a date, I'll tell you what day of the week it was, what I was doing on that day. Most people remember 8 to 11 events within any given year, but I'm here to change that. I know that I can help you develop a much better memory. Now, how many people want to have a much better memory? Everybody, right? Of course, of course. Okay, so what I had to do when I was 6 years old and people would say, what's with that kid and her memory? Why does she remember exactly when I was here last, what I was wearing, things like that? My parents knew that I had a very unusual memory, and I grew up in Chicago in the Logan Square area, one of 6 kids. Logan Square. Now, anybody who knows, anyone who's from a big family, you know that you are very excited when anything differentiates you from your brothers and sisters. Because let's face it, 6 kids, it's like a litter. It's like cats in a bag. You know, you want something a little bit different. So I took great memory, I guess, and good legs. So don't tell my sisters that. All right, so here I was, this little kid, and then my circle got bigger, and it got bigger and bigger. And pretty soon people would say, well, why does she remember everything? And I would literally fall asleep at night saying, because it was fun for me. It was like time travel. I'd think, what was I doing exactly a year ago in kindergarten? What was I doing 3 years ago in 5th grade? What was I doing when I was my little brother's age? So it became this way of exercising my mind. Now, I know that I was born with something unusual. They've taken 300 measurements of my brain, and they have found 9 areas that are 10 times larger than the normal brain. I understand that. But I also understand that there are mnemonic devices and books, and people write about memory, and it's very different from the way my memory works. So when I wrote my book, Total Memory Makeover, I thought, what can I do for people so that they can maybe understand how my memory works, and maybe they'll respond to it in some way, and that's how their memory works. Okay, I grew up with a very, very fun family. My family, as I said, had a dancing school in our backyard, and one of the things that my father used to say is that there are 3 parts to every event: anticipation, participation, and recollection. And he'd say the greatest of these is recollection. So anticipation, participation, and recollection. 3 parts to every event. Right now in your life, you are anticipating something. Right now in your life, you're participating in this. And perhaps you were anticipating this 2 weeks ago, a week ago, earlier today. And perhaps, you're also recollecting something as you're sitting here. When people are talking about the brain, I'm sure that your brain is working in so many different ways. I purposely don't have a PowerPoint because I want you to try to remember and take in as much as you can from the way that I'm speaking to you. And see, as I go through what I think is so important about developing your memory, how you respond to the other speakers as well. See, to me, your memory is everything. Every single thought, feeling, everything that you do is connected not only to your memory, but of course, to your brain, but everything but this very moment is memory. And your memory is your story. It's so important that you remember all of it. So here you go. Here you have anticipation, participation, and recollection, and the greatest of these is recollection. So imagine that you're always thinking in that APR way. One of my theories that I have that they are now testing at UC Irvine that I really do believe is very different from the way most people think about memory is that everyone, no matter how many people think they have a bad memory? How many people? Okay, you don't. You just don't know that you have a primary track on which you can embed your memories. Everyone has a primary track. It's like in the jigsaw puzzle of your life, what are the hard-edged pieces? What are the things that you can interlock the other memories of your life to? Now, it might be travel, which has APR built in. You plan for a trip, you participate in the trip, then you recollect the trip with photographs, stories, etc. Or it might be sports. That might be a huge thing. There are guys who will forget their wife's anniversary or birthday, but they will remember a game from 30 years ago, what they were wearing, who was, what the different shots were, what they were drinking, everything. So maybe that's their primary track. Or maybe it's hairdos or relationships. I always used to tease that it was boys in my weight. I always knew what I weighed and who I was dating. I still do. But now I'm married to my 3rd and final husband. Okay. So here's the thing. All right, so everybody has this primary track on which they embed their memories. Everyone has something that they remember particularly well. I've even heard bats. Some guy, I did a whole thing about bats with this guy, and memories started flooding back. All right, so I believe that you have this primary track that will help you remember these other memories. And then I really believe that every single person has a dominant sense. Everybody has something. They are sight, sound, touch, taste, or smell. Everybody remembers something especially well, and they fire up a certain sense that's dominant for them. So if you can cross-connect your primary track with your dominant sense, so many other memories will come back. Now, how do you figure out what you have? Well, if you're the kind of person who would rather hear directions and create the pictures in your mind, or you'd rather, see the directions, or maybe a song takes you back immediately, or the smell of something, or maybe, I always say that sometimes you have a couple, and he'll say, she remembers everything I said to her, and she says, he only remembers me standing over, pointing my finger. So a lot of times, a very visual man is married to a very auditory woman. And you have to work together on that one. Otherwise, you could get into big trouble, for sure. So if you take your dominant sense and your primary track and you start cross-connecting this information, you can start laying the track of your past. Because this is very important. See, this is how I feel developing a strong autobiographical memory is so important. This is how I always describe it. If every day you wake up, you live your life, you turn off the light, you go to sleep. You wake up, you live your life, you turn off the light, you go to sleep. And nothing has moved forward. Well, then what does it all mean? So to me, developing a strong autobiographical memory, it's really our strongest line of defense against meaninglessness that we have. Because if you can develop a strong autobiographical memory, what you can do is you can take the information from your past, bring it to your present, and let it inform a better future. You can say to yourself, wait a minute, wait, there's a red flag over there. I'm picking the same kind of guy. Maybe, he was cheap at dinner. I had a bad tipper once before. Let me try to remember that bad date that went south later on, 3 years later. Or, wow, I want to go into my boss and ask for a raise. Let me really remember what it was that happened. How can I empower myself? Well, how can I fill myself up? We are so lazy in terms of using our past to make a better future. First of all, we've gotten very lazy in terms of electronic devices, you even get punished in LA for dialing out a number if you're not fast enough. They want you to use only, voice activation. So we've gotten very lazy, and we're not stimulating our brains enough. We're not using our memories enough, and we're trusting everything but our own wherewithal. Now, memory is tied to adrenaline. This has been proven by Dr. James McGaugh, who is the #1 researcher at UC Irvine, which is where I do all the testing. I've answered over 1,000 questions. I've been wired, put through an MRI. They've taken blood samples, cheek samples, hair samples, motor control, everything. We're part of the research for Alzheimer's and dementia and so many other things that they're doing. And I guess we've really changed the medical books and the science books because they had no idea that people could remember as much as we remember. People say, well, isn't it crowded in there? And what about all those bad breakups? Do I even want to remember that? Well, here's the truth. Memory is tied to adrenaline. So you're going to remember the highs and the lows, no matter what goes on in your life. You're going to remember those times, the birth of a child, the fabulous wedding. You're going to remember a great first date. You're going to remember some kind of accomplishment that you had. But you're also going to remember that time you were embarrassed, that time you were rejected, the death of a parent, all those things, because memory is tied to adrenaline. Now, maybe I had a good memory because I have a lot of adrenaline. I don't know. But I know that memory is tied to adrenaline. But I'm trying to help people bring back all those middle-of-the-road things, all those little nuanced, relationships and times with your family and those summer dinners and that time that you were a kid and you had these little things. Because memories come back for people in different ways, but they don't know how to access them. Have you ever gotten a massage and all of a sudden something comes up? Or you've smelled something, or you've tasted something, or you've heard something, and a memory that you didn't even know that you remembered it, but there it was. Or you're with somebody who reminds you of something, and then all of a sudden you go, oh yeah, Yeah, that did happen. Oh, yeah, that's right. No, that did happen. I do that all the time with people. You know, people have walked away from, before the whole 60 Minutes thing, people would walk away from a conversation with me going, wow, I must have meant a lot to her. Whoa, she really liked me, and I don't remember half of what we did. I can't tell you how many times that has happened to me, especially with guys. Yeah, of course, always with guys. But I always say, if you're afraid of those lows and those highs, you're going to remember them anyway, or those lows especially. You're going to remember them anyway because they're like tied to adrenaline. And the thing is that if you ignore those lows, or you want to back away from those lows, or those unpleasant things from childhood, from bad relationships, from being embarrassed or whatever, and not use them, I say that they become these emotional boogeymen that start to haunt you. Because everything you've ever been through in your life is on your emotional hard drive. And it's making you behave in certain ways, whether or not you want it to. All of a sudden, those things come up, and you don't know why you're behaving a certain way. But if you could remember things from your past and bring them to the present, it can help you understand as you process and metabolize the negative things, the sweet things, the harder things, all those different things that you have in your life that are so much the fabric of your life, not just cotton. Okay, I usually talk for longer, so I know that I've got a very short time and I want to explain something to you. The 4 ways that memories come in, because it's not only the primary track, it's not only the dominant sense, it's also the 4 ways of memory retrieval. Because what I'm trying to do is strengthen in you the way you receive, the way you retain, and then the way you retrieve memories. Because my retrieval system happens to be a very sophisticated one, but it's only in thinking about how I do it that I realized that there are 4 different types of memory retrieval. And then I'm going to do a demonstration of how my memory works. Because I'm here because I wanted to share information about you. Okay, so these are the 4 types of memory retrieval. They are what I call horizontal, vertical, mushrooming, or sporadic. And I'll give you an example of each. Let's say that you went to a wedding. You went to a wedding. And I said, hey, how was that wedding last weekend? How'd it go? And you said, oh my gosh, it was great. We got there on Friday. There was a rehearsal dinner. We all went to the bar afterwards. I got up and jogged. Then we went to the wedding. Then we did. And you tell me in a very horizontal, chronological, kind of anecdotal sort of way. And you kind of skim the surface, but it's, this is your memory of that weekend. And if I said, hey, how was that wedding? And you said, oh my gosh, I had a conversation with my cousin. And you start to describe this one point in that timeline of the day, and you start to go deeper and deeper, and you start describing what she was wearing, and what the band was playing, and what the wallpaper was like behind her, and what you two were talking about, and the themes of a conversation. So now you've gone deeper, deeper, deeper into a vertical memory. And maybe I've said to you, okay, oh, how was that wedding? And you said, oh my gosh, I met somebody there. We had lunch a week later. We're going to do a project together, blah, blah, blah. And it was a mushrooming. So I asked you about a specific point, but you mushroomed to something that was very connected to it. Or maybe I said, how was that wedding you went to? And you said, oh my gosh, I was there. There was a guy who looked exactly like my boss from 10 years ago. I was immediately back behind my desk looking at that jerk who took all the credit for my work. So you've had now a sporadic memory. So these are the 4 ways that your memories come in. And you might be dominant in one of these ways. You might be a very horizontal, chronological person in describing your memories or even accessing them. You might be a very vertical memory person, or you might be a very mushrooming person, or a very sporadic person. But take the ride. Take the ride. Use your primary track, your dominant sense, and your memory retrieval system to sort of bring back the things from your past. Now, here are a couple exercises that you can try every single day. Because I do classes all over the country, and in a room this size, I've said to people, I'm going to bring back everybody's freshman and high school schedule. Every single person is going to have their freshman and high school schedule within a few minutes. And, I said, who knows theirs? And a girl raised her hand. She was 15, and I said, honey, you better remember it. That was last year. You better. But within 15 minutes, every single person had their freshman and high school schedule, except for 3 people who just didn't want to play. Now, here's the truth. Why is this even important? It's important because you can look back on any point of your life and say, okay, where was I? Who was I? What was I doing? What can I improve? What am I still doing? What can I use? How can I remember? How can I connect this with this? Why do you think Facebook is so important and now so popular, and people get on and like, oh, let's have the neighborhood get on and let's talk about this, and or reunions for people or timelines for people. Your memory is your story, and your story is interesting. Your story is you, and you don't want to forget anything. I can tell you, I've seen people suffer through Alzheimer's and dementia. You do not want that to happen. And the more you can stimulate your mind, it's great for people to memorize decks of cards or do crossword puzzles or something. But I'm telling you, if you have anyone in your family who is suffering from this, who is suffering or the early onset Alzheimer's or dementia, what you have to do is you have to get them to talk about their primary track, their dominant sense, and get them to play to their strengths. Here's the other thing. When I do memory classes, I talk about a crossroads. Everybody's got a crossroads somewhere in their lives. And I have people bring an object, a memory object that's connected to that crossroads. And I've seen people do amazing work just changing their brains, changing their minds, using a memory from the past to take them back to that crossroad. And usually it's like, there was a woman who had a perfume bottle. It was a horrible breakup, representative of that. She brought it in. She started talking. Long story short, she was in a depression, had gotten very heavy, couldn't work. She brought that perfume bottle in, did the memory work on it, and not only was she able to have lunch with the guy and get some closure, but she was able to move on in her life. So our memories are powerful, and they are such a strong part of us. So it's very important for us to stimulate them in a very different way than maybe you've read before. Okay, I only have a minute and a half left. Somebody from the audience, I said that I would, if anybody who doesn't mind, I guess I have to ask a girl rather than a guy rather than a girl. If just tell me your birthday. Who wants to tell me their birthday? Okay, you. August 18th, 1990? Okay, so August 18th, 1990 was a Saturday, right? You don't know what day of the week you were born? You don't know what day of the week you were born? August 18th, 1990. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know exactly what I was doing on that day. August 18th, 1990, I was traveling. I had just been cast in the show Evening Shade, and my husband, second husband, father of my children, but not my third and final, he and I went to Evening Shade, Arkansas that weekend but you don't even remember. August 18th, 1990. All right, so that's, okay, so let me just describe to you what happens in my brain when she says that. August 18th, it was a Saturday, right? Look it up. You can't stump me. I've been on radio shows. People throw dates at me. I say to the guys, because they offer tickets, I say, you're going to have to give the tickets away because now we're 22 callers in and people can't stump me. And, all these other things. All right, so this is what happens for me, the way my brain works. I hear 1990, or I hear any year, 1990, and how it presents itself. So I'm doing it from your point of view. You're me now, okay? I'm me, but you're me now. It presents itself like 365 simultaneous DVD, like a scene selection on a DVD. Imagine little montages that go all the way across. So January for me is here. January for you would be here because you're me now. And it just lines itself up. And some of the videos come in stronger than others, but I can focus in on one. I can tell you a horizontal, I can tell you a vertical, I can tell you a mushrooming, or I can tell you a sporadic thing that happens on these different days. I can it's just the way it works. People would say, isn't it crowded in there? And I say, no, it's so organized because it's all right. Oh, I'm out of time. It's so organized that I have no trouble remembering. And in fact, the more I'm exposed to, the older I get, the more I cross-connect, using primary tracks, using dominant senses, firing up, not being afraid of memories, the more I can use and access my entire life. So it never gets too crowded. It always just feels like me. And I hope that I've helped you a little bit with your autobiographical memories, and I've hoped to help you a little bit want to learn more about yourself and maybe learn your dominant sense, your primary track, and everything else. I had so many more demonstrations. I'm sorry. Goodbye.